So, a hearing being held today in Spokane County Superior Court is in a lawsuit over Washington's recently enacted rent control law. This is the law that was passed in the 2025 session, capping rent increases in traditional rental housing units at 7% plus inflation, so up to a maximum of 10%. So, if you are a renter in an apartment, these are pretty much guaranteed, mandatory 10%. They're going to go to the max of 10%. And if you are in a manufactured housing setting, that rent cap is 5%. So they can only raise it 5% annually. And manufactured housing park owners filed this lawsuit at the beginning of this year, arguing that the rent cap is unconstitutional and really unworkable. Now, this came with House Bill 1217. I was covering the legislature, of course, in 2025. This was a bill that got a hearing on the first day of the legislative session in 2025. And opponents were none too happy about that because they got very little notice, literally within a matter of hours. Although folks that were supporting this, lots of union groups backing the rent cap, they were there in droves. They were all over the Capitol that day. I remember the first day of that session going, who are all these people in the red shirts? Why are there dozens of people in red shirts? Those were the advocates for this bill 1217. So they filled the hearing rooms that day and in subsequent public hearings. So Kevin Schilling is the Government Affairs and Advocacy Director for the Rental Housing Association of Washington. They're one of the groups behind this lawsuit, saying that this is an unconstitutional cap on manufactured housing. And he told me that they're not being treated fairly by the law. Manufactured homes are, of course, owned by, the person owns the home, but they have to rent the piece of land that they're sitting on. And so that's what's being capped at 5% a year. He laid out the gist of their legal argument here.
Well, ultimately, the question is not only constitutional, it's a question of treating housing in a uniform way or treating different types of housing with different standards. And ultimately, you cannot create an affordable housing environment in the state of Washington if you are establishing rules for the most naturally occurring housing option to be handcuffed in a more difficult way than all the other housing is already through the rent control bill. So that is our concern. The main concern for manufactured housing in the state of Washington is that not only do we have an unconstitutional law, but that they're treating manufactured housing in a more stringent way. When at the same time, national leaders are saying manufactured housing is the best path forward for more affordability. With the passage of the 21st Century Road to Housing Act, where they made it easier, less expensive, and faster to build manufactured housing. It's going to be a lot harder to do any of that in the state of Washington when the limit for manufactured housing is way less than the limit for rental housing in the unconstitutional rent control bill.
Key supporters of the new rent cap law included the Low Income Housing Alliance and state legislators, including Senator Emily Alvarado, who championed the law to protect renters from price hikes and displacement. And this was Emily Alvarado during the May 7th, 2025 bill signing for this bill, 1217.
Housing is not a luxury. It is a basic human need. And everyone in this state deserves a stable and affordable home. And we all do better when everyone has a stable, affordable home. Children have a chance to succeed in school. Working people have a chance to save and have financial stability. People can retire with dignity. We have improved health outcomes. We can boost our economy, and we can build that state where everyone has a stable home. But we also know that the foundation is rocky right now, and far too many Washingtonians are struggling to keep up with housing costs that keep rising. Rent goes up faster than wages. Seniors see rent go up faster than Social Security. A record number of families in this state are paying more than half of their income on rent. That's not okay. And we've seen that there are excessive rent increases, 10, 20, 30%, that are having devastating impacts across our state. But today, we put common sense guardrails on our rental housing market so that hardworking families and older adults don't get unchecked excessive rent increases. This law is a good beginning. It's long overdue, and it's urgently needed. 40% of the people in the state of Washington are renters or manufactured homeowners, and before today, they had no protections over how high the rent can go, leading to pain and to devastating destabilization of families and communities.
I should note that the cap does not apply to all rental housing. New construction is, for now, not subject to the cap for the first 12 years. Public housing authorities and low income developments are also exempt. And I'm pretty sure that duplexes, triplexes are also exempt from rent caps. But Schilling argues that ultimately this is going to hurt tenants as well, because then the property owner for these manufactured lots, they don't have additional money to do improvements, to do retrofits, to do regular maintenance on the property and upkeep for the landscaping. And he believes that ultimately many will leave the market and then not provide this more affordable housing option anymore. And he says that he's convinced rent control is ultimately, he said, about advancing socialism.
And this is the unintended consequence or potentially intended consequence by folks in Olympia who just ultimately at the end of the day view ownership of property and ownership of housing as being antithetical to their political opinion, which is that we shouldn't have private property ownership. And that is the concern of housing providers everywhere, and also kind of the tension of where we're at in sort of the grander political conversation with socialists moving in and dominating the Democratic Party, where we're having elected officials at all levels of government decide that the path forward should be this direction towards socialism and public ownership of private property. And that's the tension right now and the future right now, where we're constantly pushing back and saying, no, that is not what the law allows. And you are pushing out good actors from an industry that are housing people, that are providing a service, that are providing opportunity for people to have housing, pay for housing. That if you continue down this pathway of decisions that establish a policy environment of unintended consequences, of increased regulatory burdens, you are just going to make it harder for anybody to operate in that space. And then you will have less housing. You will have the opposite of your goal, which is more housing and lower rents. You will have the opposite of that goal because there will be fewer providers in the market.
Now, there have been dozens of landlords accused of violating the rent caps since that law took effect. It went into effect the day it was signed into law, so May 7th of last year. And I reached out to the office of the Attorney General, and Mike Falk in the AG's office responded to me via email to say they have entered into 57 court ordered resolutions with landlords regarding violations of 1217. So, in most cases, those property owners have been spared of the fines because they've said, okay, I didn't know that I was out of compliance. I didn't know, that I couldn't go higher than 5% or 10%. And so then they've agreed to either pay back the tenants if they overcharge them. But they have been on the hook for legal fees at 2,500 bucks a pop for each of those violations. That's the landlord has to pay the AG's office when the AG's office comes after them and says you're out of compliance. So 2,500 bucks a pop. There were about 260,000 manufactured homes in Washington in 2024. That was the year I could find the most recent statistics for. That's 8% of the state's housing stock. So, not an insignificant number of housing units that are impacted by this. Those numbers come from the Office of Financial Management. Again, the most recent are about 2 years old, those stats are. And these are manufactured homes today, not like the old school ones. I have some family members that have, newer models of manufactured homes, and some of these are super nice and very well built, and at a fraction of the cost of, building a home on site. These, of course, are built in controlled environments and on a much larger scale, and then, of course, trucked across to wherever that lot is going to be located. So um, interesting conversation. Again, that hearing taking place today in Spokane County Superior Court. We'll keep you posted on the outcome of that legal proceeding.